My name is Emily. This is not my real name. I'm 27 years old, and for most of my life, I believed in the idea of soulmates. Maybe it was because I grew up watching my parents, two people who weren't flashy, weren't rich, but loved each other with a kind of quiet, unshakable devotion. My mom always said, love is about patience, not perfection, and I carried that idea with me into adulthood. When I met Ryan, he also 27, it felt like destiny had finally smiled at me. He wasn't just handsome. Though with his messy dark hair, hazel eyes, and that disarming grin, he definitely was. What pulled me in was how attentive he was. He listened, really listened, to the little details I shared. He remembered the names of my coworkers, the books I was reading, even the fact that I hated cilantro. I still remember our first date. We met through mutual friends at a small get-together, and while everyone else was talking loudly over drinks, Ryan and I ended up tucked into a corner, sharing stories about our childhood. He laughed when I told him about my high school drama club mishaps, and when he shared that he'd once fainted in front of his entire football team after getting his nose broken, I nearly spit my drink out. From that night on, things moved naturally. No games, no overthinking. Just two people who wanted to be around each other. For years later, he proposed. It wasn't in some grand movie-style way, and I loved that. He took me to a quiet park where we used to sit and talk when we first started dating. With trembling hands and a voice so soft it nearly broke, he asked me to marry him. I didn't hesitate for a second. The months that followed were filled with the chaos of wedding planning, but Ryan made it easy. He was involved in everything, from tasting cakes to helping me pick invitations. My friends teased me, saying their fiancés barely knew what venue they were using, while mine was debating flower arrangements. I thought it was proof of how deeply he loved me. When we finally exchanged vows in front of our families, I believed with every fiber of my being that I was walking into forever. As I stood there in my white dress, promising love and loyalty, I thought I was giving my heart to the safest person I'd ever known. But maybe that's the cruelest thing about hindsight. You realize the person who felt safest could turn into a stranger almost overnight. The honeymoon, where the first cracks appeared. We went to Italy for our honeymoon, Florence, Rome, Amalfi Coast. It was a dream trip we'd both talked about for years. For the first few days, it really was everything I hoped for. We wandered through cobblestone streets, shared gelato on warm afternoons, kissed under ancient ruins like we were the only two people in the world. But then something shifted. One night in Amalfi, we had dinner at this tiny seaside restaurant. The waitress who served us was young, bubbly, and a little too friendly with Ryan. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Ryan has always been sociable, the kind of man who chats with Uber drivers and asks strangers about their day. But that night, it didn't feel like just friendliness. He leaned in close when she talked. He laughed a little too loudly at her jokes. He complimented her earrings in a way that made my stomach twist. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking, because what man flirts with someone else on his honeymoon? But when she came back with the check and teased, "You two have to come back tomorrow. I want to see you again," Ryan didn't just smile politely. He said, "We definitely will." And we did. The very next day, when I thought we'd spend the afternoon sightseeing, Ryan insisted we stop by that same restaurant again. He made sure we sat in her section, even ordering food we didn't really want just so we could chat with her. That night, I confronted him. My voice was shaking as I asked, "Were you flirting with her?" He hesitated only a second before saying, "Yeah, maybe I was." But it didn't mean anything. It was just harmless fun. Harmless fun. On our honeymoon. I should have been furious. I should have demanded more respect, drawn a line. But instead, I swallowed it. I told myself maybe it was the wine, maybe it was just the thrill of being in a new country. I didn't want to ruin what was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives. So I stayed quiet. But silence, I've since learned, is permission. Back home, a stranger in my own marriage. When we returned from Italy, I tried to pretend everything was fine. I buried the memory of that waitress deep inside and focused on unpacking, decorating our apartment, and playing house like newlyweds were supposed to. But Ryan, he wasn't the same. At first, it was subtle. Shorter answers when I asked about his day. a distracted look in his eyes when I shared something exciting. He was always scrolling on his phone, always a little restless, like my presence wasn't enough anymore. When I brought it up, he brushed me off. Marriage isn't always fireworks, Emily. Sometimes it's just routine. But it wasn't routine. It was distance. It was coldness I couldn't explain. The man who used to kiss me out of nowhere now barely touched me unless he wanted something. The man who once comforted my insecurities now dismissed them as overthinking. I started to feel invisible. I wish I could say I confronted him, demanded answers. But instead, I folded into myself. I smiled at family dinners, posted happy photos on social media, and convinced myself that all marriages had growing pains. But late at night, lying next to him in bed while he scrolled through his phone, I felt like I was lying next to a stranger. And the scariest part? I had no idea why. I didn't know then what I know now, that Ryan had discovered a part of me I thought I'd buried forever. A secret from my past that I'd prayed would never come back. A secret that would slowly destroy everything. By the time we'd been home for a couple of months, I barely recognized the man I had married. Ryan wasn't cruel in an obvious, screaming match way. No. His weapon was indifference. He wasn't the same attentive partner who used to notice when I'd had a long day. He didn't wrap his arms around me when I came home from work or ask about the little details of my life anymore. Instead, I got distracted nods while he scrolled on his phone. I got half-hearted grunts when I told him about my coworkers. At first, I thought maybe it was the post-wedding slump people talked about. That maybe marriage just settled into this. But deep down, I knew it was different. It wasn't just comfort, it was distance. The bar incident. One Friday night, Ryan suggested we go out for drinks. I was hopeful. Maybe this was his way of reconnecting. I spent extra time getting ready, curling my hair, putting on my favorite dress, the one he used to say made me look like the only girl in the room. We went downtown to a lively bar. Music, chatter, clinking glasses. For a while, it felt good. We laughed, ordered cocktails, and I caught glimpses of the man I'd fallen in love with. And then the waitress arrived. She was tall, effortlessly pretty, and wearing these funky patterned pants. Ryan's eyes followed her as she walked away, and my stomach sank with a familiarity I didn't want to admit. When she returned, he leaned forward, smiling. "Hey, those pants are cool. Where'd you get them?" His tone wasn't casual. It was that same tone from Italy. Playful, drawn out, meant to charm. I felt my cheeks burn. This wasn't just my imagination. This was happening again. When she left, I leaned in, whispering, "Why are you flirting with her?" He pulled back instantly, frowning. "What?" "I'm not. I was just being nice. Don't be so insecure." But he didn't stop there. He rolled his eyes, chuckled under his breath, and added, "God, Emily, you always make everything about you. Maybe if you had more confidence, you wouldn't think every woman is a threat." I felt the words like a slap. For the rest of the night, I barely touched my drink. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom and sat in a stall for nearly half an hour, tears slipping down my cheeks, wondering what I had done wrong. By the time I returned, Ryan was scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. No questions. No concern. Just nothing. That was the night I realized it wasn't in my head. He wasn't just tired or distracted. He was pulling away. Home didn't feel like home. After that, I started noticing the little imbalances more. I cooked. I cleaned. I did the laundry. Ryan only helped if I specifically asked, and even then it was with a sigh, like I was nagging. But when it came to intimacy, he never hesitated. He expected me to be available, even when I felt unseen, untouched, unwanted the rest of the day. When I told him I wanted to feel closer, that I missed the little things we used to do, holding hands, kissing randomly, laughing together, he shrugged. Marriage isn't always fireworks, Emily. Sometimes it's just routine. But it didn't feel like routine. It felt like neglect. I started dreading bedtime. Because when he reached for me, it felt transactional. Like something I owed him, rather than something we shared. And the worst part was the thought that gnawed at me every time. Was he picturing someone else? Humiliation in public. It wasn't just at home. Ryan started making comments that cut deeper than I think he realized, or maybe he did realize, and that was worse. The first time it happened was at my mom's 60th birthday dinner. Everyone was around the table, laughter and warmth filling the room. I went to grab a small plate of cheese and crackers, and Ryan's voice cut through the chatter. "Are you really eating again?" The table went silent. My face burned as every eye turned toward me. Ryan knew my insecurities. He knew I had struggled with body image since I was a teenager. In the past, he'd comforted me, telling me I was beautiful no matter what. But now, he was mocking me. Before I could respond, my mom snapped, "Ryan, don't you dare speak to her like that. She can eat whatever she wants." Her voice shook with protective fury, and I felt tears sting my eyes. But the damage was done. The shame, the humiliation. It burrowed deep. A few nights later, it happened again. At home this time. I grabbed a small bowl of popcorn, and Ryan glanced up from the couch with a smirk. "Wow, eating again? Didn't you just have dinner?" I set the bowl down, my throat tight. "Ryan, please stop." He sighed, rolling his eyes. "I'm just trying to help you, Emily. You've said you want to watch your weight. Don't get so defensive." It wasn't help. It was cruelty disguised as concern. I sat on the far end of the couch, tears prickling my eyes, wishing I could disappear. Losing myself. Little by little, I started to fade. I skipped meals just to avoid his comments. I stopped dressing up because he didn't notice anymore. I avoided mirrors. Even my friends began to notice me pulling away, canceling brunches, declining invitations, making excuses. It was easier to shrink into myself than to keep pretending. And Ryan? To everyone else, he was still the charming, funny husband. At family gatherings, he cracked jokes. With friends, he laughed and carried on like nothing was wrong. Nobody saw the way he looked at me when no one else was around. Nobody saw how invisible I felt. I kept asking myself what happened. Where did my Ryan go? But there was something I didn't know then. Something that made his distance make sense. Because while I was searching for answers in myself, Ryan already had one. He had discovered a secret I thought I had buried forever. A secret from my past. A secret that would explain everything. By December, my marriage felt like walking through a house full of broken glass. Every step, every word, every moment with Ryan had the potential to cut me open. We weren't fighting outright. No screaming matches, no slammed doors. Instead, it was worse. Silence, sharp comments, cold shoulders, and the kind of indifference that makes you question your own worth. I felt like I was begging for scraps of attention from the man who once couldn't go an hour without telling me he loved me. But nothing could have prepared me for the night the truth finally came out. The silent dinner. It was a Tuesday evening. I had cooked dinner, chicken, roasted vegetables, the kind of meal I knew he used to love. We sat at the table in near silence, the only sound the clinking of forks. Halfway through, Ryan set his fork down and stared at me. Not with anger, but with this cold, unreadable expression that made my chest tighten. "I talked to Mark today," he said finally. "Mark. One of his college friends." I smiled weakly. "Oh, how's he doing?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "He told me something interesting. Something about you." My stomach flipped. "About me?" He nodded, eyes narrowing. "He said you and him hooked up once. Before you and I ever started dating." I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. Oh God. It had been years ago. A mistake. One drunken night at a party, before Ryan and I ever got together. I had buried it deep, convinced it didn't matter because it was in the past. When I later met Ryan through the same circle of friends, I never told him. I told myself it was irrelevant. But now, sitting across from my husband, I realized the truth was standing in the room with us, threatening to burn everything down. "Ryan, that was years ago," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It was before us. It didn't mean anything." His laugh was humorless. "Didn't mean anything? Emily, you slept with my friend. And you hid it from me. For years." I felt tears sting my eyes. "I didn't hide it to hurt you. I just..." I didn't want it to change the way you saw me. I thought if I told you, you'd never give me a chance. Ryan's jaw clenched. So instead, you let me stand up in front of our families, vow my life to you, while you kept this little secret tucked away. You let me marry you without knowing the truth. I reached across the table, desperate, but he pulled his hand back like my touch burned. Ryan, please. It was one mistake. I regretted it the second it happened. You're the only man I've ever truly loved. I didn't tell you because I was afraid of losing you. He shook his head, bitter laughter spilling out. You did lose me, Emily. You just didn't realize it until now. Connecting the dots. Suddenly, everything made sense. The honeymoon flirting, the way he dismissed me, the cutting comments, the coldness, the distance. He had known. Maybe not right away, but at some point after the wedding, Ryan had learned about my past. And instead of confronting me, instead of asking for the truth, he let it rot inside him, turning love into resentment, turning tenderness into cruelty. My mind spun. Why didn't you just talk to me? Why didn't you tell me you knew? Ryan's eyes flashed. Because I wanted to see if you'd ever come clean. I wanted to see if the woman I married would be honest with me, or if she'd keep lying to my face. I swallowed hard. I wasn't lying every day. I was too scared to admit it. I thought if I kept it buried, it would stay there. His voice cracked, raw and sharp. But it didn't stay buried, Emily. It's been eating me alive every single day since I found out. Cracks into canyons. We didn't finish dinner. Ryan stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out without another word. I sat there at the table, staring at the food that had gone cold, my body trembling with the weight of what had just happened. I wanted to scream, to chase him, to beg him to see that my love for him was real, that the past was just that, the past. But I also knew, deep down, that this wasn't something I could just sweep under the rug anymore. Because now the cracks in our marriage weren't just cracks. They were canyons, wide and impossible to ignore. The days after. For the next week, Ryan barely spoke to me. When he did, it was clipped distant. He spent more nights at work, coming home late, barely acknowledging me before collapsing into bed. When he did look at me, his eyes weren't full of love anymore. They were full of betrayal. And the worst part? I couldn't even blame him. Because no matter how much I wanted to defend myself, no matter how much I wanted to scream that it was just one mistake, the truth was undeniable. I had lied by omission. I had chosen to bury a truth that mattered. And now I was paying the price. The breaking point approaches. One night I tried again. I cornered him in the living room, my voice shaking but firm. Ryan, I'm sorry. I know I should have told you. I was terrified of losing you, and I made the wrong choice. But please, can't we work through this? Can't we go to counseling? Can't we at least try? He looked at me, his face unreadable, before muttering the words that shattered me. I don't know if I even know who I married anymore. And just like that, I felt something inside me break. The man who once promised to be my forever was gone. And I had nobody to blame but myself. After Ryan's words, I don't know if I even know who I married anymore. Something in the air between us shifted permanently. We weren't partners anymore. We were strangers sharing the same roof, tiptoeing around each other like broken glass covered every inch of our apartment floor. I tried to fix things. God, I tried. I left him little notes like I used to. I cooked his favorite meals. I even suggested couples therapy, desperate to claw back some piece of what we once had. But Ryan didn't budge. He wasn't cruel outright, but he wasn't the man I married either. His love, the warmth that once wrapped around me like a blanket, was gone. The final confrontation. It was a Saturday night when everything came to a head. He came home late, again, smelling faintly of whiskey, and wearing that empty look I'd come to dread. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Ryan, please, I said, my voice cracking as tears welled in my eyes. Talk to me. Yell at me if you have to. Just something. I can't take this silence anymore. He set his keys down, his shoulders tense, and finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, angry, but beneath it all, deeply hurt. Why, Emily? He asked quietly, his voice trembling. Why didn't you just tell me? Before we ever got serious. Before the engagement. Before the vows. Why didn't you give me the choice? I swallowed hard, my body trembling. Because I was terrified. I was stupid. It was a mistake that meant nothing, and I didn't want it to define me. I thought if you knew, you'd see me differently. I thought I'd lose you. He let out a bitter laugh. And now, you did lose me. Because you didn't trust me with the truth. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I love you. I've always loved you. Please, Ryan, don't throw this away. Don't throw us away. He shook his head, pain etched into every line of his face. You don't get it, Emily. You didn't just cheat years ago. You cheated me out of honesty. You cheated me out of the chance to make an informed choice about marrying you. You cheated me out of trust. The words cut deeper than any blade could. His decision. That night, Ryan packed a bag. Not all his things, just enough to make it clear that he wasn't staying. As he zipped the suitcase shut, I clutched his arm, sobbing. Please. Don't do this. Don't leave me. For a moment, I saw a flicker of conflict in his eyes. A glimpse of the man who once held me close and promised forever. But it was gone in an instant. I can't stay in a marriage where every time I look at you, I wonder what else you've hidden, he said quietly. I don't trust you. And without trust, what's left? And then he was gone. The sound of the door closing echoed in my chest like the shattering of glass. Aftermath. It's been weeks since that night. Ryan hasn't come back. He sends the occasional text about logistics, bills, mail, his things still in the apartment. But nothing beyond that. I sleep in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship. The laughter, the vows, the little gestures that made me feel so loved. And the secret I buried. The secret that destroyed it all. I told myself it was just one mistake, that it didn't define me. But it did. Not because of what I did in the past, but because of what I chose not to do in the present, tell the truth. If I had been honest from the start, maybe Ryan would have walked away then. Maybe he wouldn't have given me the chance to fall in love with him. But at least I wouldn't be sitting here now, surrounded by the ashes of a life I built on silence. Now, I'm left with nothing but regret. Regret that I lied by omission. Regret that I let fear dictate my choices. Regret that I lost the only man I ever truly loved. My confession. So here I am, writing this, because I don't know where else to put the weight of my guilt. I cheated before marriage. I hid it. I told myself it didn't matter. But it mattered more than I ever realized. And in the end, it cost me everything. I don't know if Ryan will ever forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. All I know is that I ruined my marriage with my own silence. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life.